Welcome to our June session. This session was billed as being pivotal. In the movies during desperate times, that is often when the superheroes show up and save the day. Of course, in reality, we know there are no creatures with such magical powers, and we simply cannot wait for others to salvage the situation. People who know me tend to categorize me as a hard-nosed realist. And thus it's true that I see our times as increasingly dire circumstances regarding the climate crisis. But I'm also part of this community of faith. And I believe God's goodness shall have the final word. I frame it as God's spirit of goodness always and everywhere, coaxing all toward authentic life. It is a spirituality that sees energizing opportunities to align better and work under God's good spirit. That said, what works for me may not work for you. Find what grounds you in an enlivening fashion in your support of life, because you are needed. The focus today, then, is to explore those spirit-inspired, life-critical opportunities to find our appropriate place in the web of life and to recognize and transform those distortions that we have inherited into the world God envisions for all life, recognizing that some of you have already been responding in full measure. In our diverse responses, they will reinforce each other and strengthen this fabric of life that is fraying. But before continuing, just some quick housekeeping. As you will note, there is no accompanying discussion session in June. The dates were simply all taken. So the next formal session will be in September. However, if you would like, we are going to be looking after a GPNW worship service on June 26, as you will see on the times. And you are by all means welcome to attend. You will get an email and Zoom link for that. Okay. Very briefly, I just want to ground our current conversation, given that the IPCC just released their 6th assessment. That is, it's those every 5, 6, 7 years assessments. The latest one has come out over the last few months. As you can see, with Working Group 1, they are now unequivocal that climate change is real and caused by human activity. There are other causes, but they're negligible in comparison. That was the Science Working Group. The second working group is clear that climate change is disrupting nature, humans, and infrastructure. Now, as an example, you can take a look at our website's archive page and listen to Jay Ram from Fiji. He's one of our church members, and he indicates how they must move to higher ground because of the rising sea levels, and their crops are failing due to the salty water. This report indicated the impacts are global, almost everywhere on the planet. They're going to be different everywhere, and for sure they're different here in the US and Canada, but they are present. The third report, the final report that just came out a couple months ago, indicates basically it's now or never. we have to reduce the global greenhouse emissions by 43% by 2030 and net zero by 2015. So this is all coming from the IPCC. Let's take a little closer look at that before moving on. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Get my cursor over here. You can see this red line. That's the amount of carbon we're putting in the atmosphere. Along here is every decade, 2020, 30, 40, and 50. So you can see right now we're putting out about 40 gigatons of carbon equivalents a year. Now we need to half that each decade. So that means we've got to go from 40 down to 20 in 10 years, then down to 10 in the next 10 years, and then down to 5 by 2015. Now, you'll note that's still not net zero, and that's because of carbon removal. The blue line, as you can see, we're anticipating it will remove the final 5 gigatons. But I want you to note that that blue line is aspirational. We don't know. We're simply hoping if we plant the 1 billion trees, if we can somehow get this carbon capture scenarios put together. You know, we've got 30 years to do that. And we're simply hoping that we can do that. However, the red line, we've got the technology to do this. It's the willpower that's lacking. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. And that's got the two sides, remember, the systemic level, the political aspect, and the individual level. And that's what we're focusing on in terms of this pivotal moment and what can be done. So today's emphasis is on two simple points: that the window of opportunity is now or never. The IPCC says that. And of course, if you remember Doctrine and Covenants 150, you know, these are pretentious times, etc. And it ends, we've got to be in the forefront while there is yet day. Well, that day is coming to an end. It's so easy to read that as, oh yeah, the next, while there is yet day, and that day is just going to stay around. No, it's coming to an end. So we need decisive action now. Secondly, the second point that I hope will be your takeaway is that there are life-critical opportunities now. We're highly diverse, and that's one of the things that's going to be needed, is it just this vast range of things that need to be done. So anything that you do, big or small, is going to matter and is going to make a difference. And some of those best actions even save money. But what we're going to focus on in a moment is that some of the actions, we're going to take a look at one action in particular, methane, can have an enormous impact. Okay, but let's just take a quick look at foundations before. But those are the two key points. Okay, so action number one, you can start as soon as you get off this webinar, and presumably most of you have been at this for some time, and it's been woven in the webinar for quite some time. And that is trying to find our proper place in the web of life, that sense of spirituality. We've gone from and recognized that the idea of dominion over nature was wrong, and in fact is what caused a lot of the problem. And we moved to stewardship as care for nature, which was a much better stance. But what I'm suggesting, what a lot of people are suggesting, is it needs to be even one step farther. Stewardship as a mutual relationship with. In other words, recognizing we simply are one part of a web of life, and we have to see that symbiotic relationship, get a better sense of that. And so how? Well, you can spend some time in nature. Again, after the webinar, go out in nature, spend some time, watch it, be curious, take a look at the ground and see what's happening, this little ecosystem there, or the ecosystem of a forest, or it's simply of a plant, whatever. Start to develop, and again, many of you have, I'm sure, start to develop this sense of relationship in our place. Be curious about things. As well, you can read about it, and there's one good book, Braiding Sweetgrass. There's lots of other ones. And then, of course, read Solid Facts and the fact that you're here, and some of you being part of these webinars indicates you've already been doing that. But anyway, it's critical to find that wellspring, that support, that vision enabler sense that will ground you and move us all towards action. Okay, second action that can be taken right away, and again, could even save you money, is to reduce. You know, one of the great 3 R's of the ecological movement, the very first one, is to reduce. Now, we needn't go back to being cave dwellers, but a consumerist society has left lots of room for us to reduce and feel fine about it. We are bombarded so constantly that it has really distorted the shape of authentic humanity, and we need to be sort of a counterculture to that. So give it a try. You know, these are just some samples, lots of other ones. Combine car trips rather than just every time going out. Save them up. Use transit, bike, or walk. Think about using one less flight or one less cruise. Try one less animal protein meal per week. Adjust your thermostat 1 degree. If you're looking at a house, does it have to be a bigger house? Smaller? In the 1950s, 60s, those were, gee, they felt like great houses. Less clothes and so on. You get the idea. We definitely need to reduce our footprint. Okay, so action number 3. This is one that probably hasn't, well, I'm sure it hasn't been clear, but is being clarified now. And that is the effect of methane leaks. This one action, if it was enacted, and it's going to require political action, could get us most of the way to our 2030 goal, because it can cut our greenhouse gases basically in half. So listen to this TED Talk by one of the climate scientists, just giving a brief description of this. It's only partial. You can Google it and find the whole one if you want. Here goes.
In the time it took me to walk on stage, around 10 seconds, more than 10,000 metric tons of climate-warming gases have been pumped into the atmosphere from human actions. To provide some context on just how much that is the weight equivalent of 170,000 of me emitted in gas in 10 seconds. 99% of this pollution is carbon dioxide, CO2, and we know we need to reduce it. The other 1% is almost entirely methane, which mostly comes from producing fossil fuels, managing waste, and raising livestock. But that 1% of methane could cause more warming over the next 10 years than all that CO2. This is because methane absorbs a lot more energy per unit mass. for reasons relating to its molecular structure and its ability to form other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. CO2 is important because it can linger in the atmosphere long after it is emitted, which means we must achieve net zero emissions to eventually stabilize our climate. This is key for protecting generations to come. But with climate change already devastating so many lives today, we can't focus only on the distant future. My work as a scientist aims to identify ways to slow down warming as fast as possible so that we can lower the risks of worsening damages in the near future. This is where methane comes in. That 1% of methane may cause more warming than all that CO2 in the next several years, but it only lasts in the atmosphere for around a decade. Methane's warming power is therefore not from the gradual buildup over time like CO2, but almost entirely from recent emissions. This means that every time we reduce methane, we can reduce a lot of warming right away. In fact, cutting methane is the single fastest, most effective opportunity to immediately slow down the rate of warming. And this is because not only does methane act fast, but because we can act fast, because we have the technologies available right now to cut methane emissions from human activities in half. And even better, many of these solutions pay for themselves. The methane we emit comes from three main sources: energy production, waste management, and agriculture. The first category, energy production, is the largest and cheapest opportunity we have to cut methane today. Most methane from energy isn't from burning fossil fuels, it's from producing fossil fuels. Because natural gas, which is mostly methane, can easily escape into the atmosphere when extracting oil, gas, and coal, or when transporting gas through pipelines. In fact, these leaks can completely offset any near-term climate benefits of using gas instead of coal. But we have the technologies to cut the majority of these emissions, with around half for no net cost because the saved gas can be sold. For example, oil fields in West Texas are wasting enough gas right now to heat more than 2 million homes. Fixing the methane problem, though, can be as simple as tightening a valve, replacing a gasket, or tuning an engine. A major reason why these easy fixes haven't been implemented isn't the cost. It's because governments and industry have been data deprived, lacking information on where and how much is emitted. But our ability to detect these leaks has rapidly advanced in recent years. Everything from handheld instruments to sensors on aircrafts and drones, and now there's a growing universe of satellites designed to locate and measure methane from space. That list includes MethaneSat, which is expected to be launch-ready next year and will be able to detect and quantify methane emissions across the globe with unprecedented precision. If we can find it, we can fix it. This part is not rocket science. It's more like plumbing. I can't tell you enough how hopeful that makes me for the future. Of all this pollution, it is the methane that could warm the Earth the most over the next 10 years. But we know how to cut these emissions in half right now from energy, waste, and agriculture. This is the methane moment, because cutting methane is the single fastest, most effective opportunity to reduce climate change risks in the near term. And cutting CO2, which will otherwise build up over time, is the key to reducing risks in the long term. We need to do both to plot a safer course for ourselves and our children and for generations to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, so as you heard, if this one action was enacted, it could get us most of the way to our 2030 goal in a few years. We've got the knowledge, we've got the tools, and it'll even save industry money. Now, what it will require is political constituency. And in that regard, by the end of the week, we will have up on the website some template letters that you can use to write your legislature and just simply tell them to get on board now with this methane reduction, or call them up, even right now. Something as simple as saying, look, I want all that methane leakage stopped now. That's really all it takes. That's a good enough signal. Now, as you noted, that was the energy sector. There is also the agricultural sector and the waste management. And what we're going to just very briefly turn to is the agricultural sector, because that involves cattle primarily, other things as well. And of course, that then involves meat and the food you're going to have. And I'm going to turn it over to Brad and Joan, and they're going to have a little conversation, simply to indicate that even on our team, we have varying views of what we're willing to do and not quite yet. So Brad, I'll take it over to you.
Reduce the carbon and reduce the methanes. And so we were vegetarians for 6 to 7 years. And it was only because of my wife getting Lyme disease and her doctors encouraging her to put in more animal products back into her, animal protein back into her life for to be healthy with this illness. We're more omnivores. And so we have gardens, we grow our own food. We know that a little protein goes a long way. We'd like to find local and sustainable farmers, particularly if they're raising organically. That reduce transportation costs, that reduce more carbon and things into the air. We'll look at small farming operations, less cattle, less animals that are being raised, more ethically. And so it's been a journey for us, a spectrum. And I saw probably many of you make these same choices, these same decisions. And I'll let Joan just share a little bit of her story and her journey with food.
Thanks, Brad. About 10 years ago, Carmen was going to be away at camp for a week. And I'd been reading, about this kind diet, kind to humans, kind to the planet, all this kind of stuff. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to try eating vegetarian for 1 week while Carmen's away at camp. Perfect opportunity to experiment. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'll be full. I don't know if I'll have enough energy. So I tried it for a week and discovered it was actually easy. Now, easy does not mean I suddenly found all these neat recipes. Quite frankly, that's the hardest part of the vegetarian journey, is finding new recipes. But that was great. I went off it for a week. Life was fine. Carmen came home. I cooked some beef. We ate it. And I was sick for 3 days. And I thought, that's bizarre. I wonder if I've had a virus or if it was the meat. And, at this point, I'm 60 years old, and I never had a problem with meat as far as I knew. So I thought I'll go off it for another 2 weeks and try again. Cooked chicken. After 2 weeks, I was sick for 3 days. And what I came to realize is that I don't have the enzymes to digest meat properly. So that's how I started on my journey towards vegetarianism. I discovered that I feel better, which I never would have done if I hadn't experimented. So I guess the bottom line for my story is experiment. See what happens. And that's probably all the time we've got, right?
Yeah, I'll simply chime in on behalf of Lori. We had this discussion as a team, and Lori said, well, I can't do it without meat. I've got to have my meat. So there you've got it. 3 different people, even on this team, 3 different places. And that's what the point. Find out what works for you. If it works, great. If it doesn't, try something else. The final thing is just, Paul, if you would just give a couple sentences, because part of this whole methane problem, there's the energy sector, there's the technology to completely handle that. They can detect it in satellites and everything. But the waste management, that's recycling or composting or whatever. Paul, how do you handle that aspect of it?
Well, years ago, I had read an article, got all enthused, and we have a worm farm on our patio. It's about 1.5 by 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, and it's a upwardly migrating worm farm. And almost all of our table scraps, like coffee grounds, coffee filter, tea bags, the brown lettuce leaves that you don't put in your salad, carrot peelings, that all goes into this worm farm. They love watermelon rind, and we throw very little organic material into our trash. And the casings, or when my grandchildren were smaller, they relished this idea of being able to say, hey, grandpa has worm poop. Being justified to say poop out loud, I evidently was a really big deal. They're in high school and college now, so it's not as big a deal, but yeah, it's just a way to kind of reduce. It's small. If you do it right, it doesn't smell. The net effect is you have some great fertilizer for your plants, and probably something we'll do a little short video on sometime.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so final takeaway, methane, simply that one topic can do an incredible amount in terms of reducing greenhouse gases. It's going to require political advocacy. We're going to have templates up on the website later this week when the video gets up there that you can pull down and write your legislature. This is the time not to think about it, not to simply say, yes, that's a good idea. This is a time to go and write or phone. You could just phone up your legislature and say, look, I want methane out of my air. That gets the message across just fine. Keep it simple. Okay, we're going to now move on to some of our guests, and Susan will give a brief introduction of each of the guests, and then I will show the video, and hopefully it will work properly this time. Susan.
Thank you, Rod. We will be showing you 3 different videos from 3 past presenters who are sharing with you what they have done to make a difference in the world. The first one is going to be Dr. Richard Waugh from the University of Wisconsin in Madison and Platteville. And he will be sharing about some of the things that he and his wife are doing in Wisconsin. You have that ready, Rod?
Yeah.
What I'd like to share today is a few things that I thought I'd just share.
Rod,
some
we're
of the things
seeing
that
the
my wife and I
methane
do.
leaks.
And most of these are lifestyle kinds of issues, and that's really
Oh, it was working. It was working. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Initially, we had the methane leaks, and then it's switched.
Oh, just a time lag. Okay.
Really important because we need to always remember that the lifestyle that we have traditionally had is what's caused the problem of climate change. So we're going to have to change lifestyle to some degree to address that issue. So some of the things we've done, and I'm not trying to hold ourselves up as the great shining virtue or paragons of sustainability or anything like that, but some of the things that we've done is that we've intentionally only have one car. So that means that we have to walk a lot of places we want to go. I end up doing a lot of walking. When we bought our home, we intentionally bought our home near some of the places we would need to be, our work, our schools, the stores that we go to, things like that. And I can walk to the bank, I can walk to all these places, and I do. So I have a oversized backpack that I carry to go buy groceries in, and provided I don't have too many groceries, I just go and load up the backpack and walk home. And that saves a lot of carbon, just simply using cars less intensely. And the car we do have gets 45 miles to the gallon, and it's a gas car, but we're saving up and we're planning to buy an electric car in another few years. And so we're going to have an electric car soon, and we think that's important. We try to consume appropriately. Consuming is a huge issue in this because it's probably safe to say that we Americans consume too much. So we try to buy fewer things, buy things we need, but not buy things we don't need, or buy things dictated by trends or fashions just because that's what everybody's doing. We just, get along fine with the stuff we have often, as much as possible. The fact that we bought our home near the stores that we often go to means that the stores are a long way away, 4 or 5 miles away, we don't go to very often. We just don't patronize those places. So our scale of our lives is focused on our neighborhoods and the places that we live. And we think that's probably important. One of the things we do try to do is patronize stores that sell local products. That's important because there's less fossil fuel use in bringing the products to market. One of the most local things we do is that my wife is an extensive garden, and she is the gardener in the family, and that's about as local as you can get, is when you can walk outside your house and cut greens and have a salad. That's ideal. It's also extremely tasty food. So we do a lot of that. And part of our outside work is we don't use very many power tools. So we don't have a snow blower, we shovel our snow. We don't have a leaf blower, we rake our leaves. For decades, I've used a non-motorized lawnmower. All of that saves, kinds of carbon emissions. So that's kind of nice. We have I tell people we have a solar powered clothes dryer, which other people would just call a clothesline. And when the weather's right, we put our clothes out on the clothesline. And when it's not right, we often just put our clothes on a rack in the house, and they dry just fine that way. So in general, we try to consume, try to not use excessive amounts of electricity and water, and we compost, and we do some of these kinds of things, which we think helps things go better. We also tend to be involved politically. I thought I'd close with this. We vote. A critical issue in the politicians we support is whether or not they support effective addressing of the issues related to climate change. And so we will not support a politician that doesn't do that. I think voting is really important. It's kind of fundamental because public policy is going to be critical in dealing with this. We also sometimes contact our representatives and people and so forth, even at the local level, city council level. So those are some of the things we've done. And I'm just happy to be able to share them with you.
So I just want to mention that about a year ago, when I was sharing with you about calculating your carbon footprint, I was mentioning my own energy consumption and the appliances and energy that I use. I mentioned the clothes dryer and I said, I live in a condo. There's no way I'm going to use a clothesline. It's not going to happen. Well, in actual fact, I'm moving in that direction. Some items now never go into the dryer, and I just hang them on hangers and wait for them to dry. The rest may go into the dryer for like 5 minutes to soften the fabric and get them all the wrinkles out, and then I pull them out damp and hang them up. Tops, pants, sweatshirts. Some of the other stuff I do dry fully in the dryer, but that's very small amount of what I do. So it's not complete, but I'm moving in that direction. I'm making progress, and it's not difficult. It's one small lifestyle adjustment that, added to the others, can make a difference. So I'd like you in the next 2 minutes to put into the chats what you are doing to make a small difference. And let's do it that way and just put them in the chats, and we'll read what some of your solutions are that you are working on right now. Now I'll get back to you to introduce the next video. Okay, let's see what you're doing. I walk whenever I can rather than driving. Yes, absolutely, I do too. I have a small garden in my backyard. Excellent, Gwen, thank you. Have large garden, eat no meat. One car, use public transit and shared vehicles, bike, walk. I eat my garden. Are you getting all these? I eat less meat. I lead a family nature club in Florida. One car, use public transit and shared vehicles, bike, walk. I have an indoor umbrella style clothesline that can hold an entire load of clothes. Yes, Judy told me about that. Driving less, walking more. Thank you, Judy, for prompting me. Garden, composting, have hybrid vehicle. Recycle, garden. Dry some clothes on fence. Fences are great. Cycling instead of driving, use the outdoor clothes drying method. Recycle, gardening, reusing water. Yes, reuse your water. Meatless meats 3 times a week. I've cut way down in anything that's packaged in plastic. Hybrid vehicle. Don't turn lights on too much. Home near services, but also on bus line. We are electric only. Smaller house. I now use laundry cleaning sheets rather than buying liquid detergent in large plastic jugs. Other cleaners are not, sometimes are not sold in plastic. Use plastic-free natural deodorant. Hey, humans. Eat a lot less meat. I had solar panel put on my roof. Hooray. Good for you. Cut my meat intake. Rain barrels. Yay, Nancy. Rain barrels. That's wonderful. Unplug electric devices at night. Yes, including your computer. And Claudia's getting ready to say something. Probably E for electric, I'm guessing. Plant-based diet as much as possible. Oh, eat plant-based diet as much as possible. Yep. I've cut way back on my animal protein. No beef and a lot less protein. Okay, that's wonderful. You can continue to put those in there. Vegetarian, Andrew. Reducing dairy, excellent. Let's go on to the next video. Our next video is going to be brought to us by Dr. Richard Gammon from the University of Washington. He was one of those who was initially the writers of the first United Nations IPCC report. So as soon as Rod gets it up, we'll hear from Richard Gammon.
I'm going to take the perspective of our home, our family here, just my wife and I. We live near Langley, Washington, on Whidbey Island. And I want to say that whatever we do as individuals won't solve the problem, but it's part of the solution, and every contribution helps. And the things we can do as individuals, as a family, the things we can do in our community, in our city, in our county, and our state, and we can advocate for policy changes at the state and federal level as well. But let's start with the local. So people are often overwhelmed. If they actually listen to and accept the climate science, it's pretty depressing. It's a negative, it's really a heavy lift. Things are disappearing from the natural world, things that we love, whether that's a glacier in the Olympic National Park or whether it's a coral reef in Hawaii. I have a hard time talking to my grandchildren about the world that I knew growing up and the world that they will face growing up. And when is it going to get better? It's not going to get better until we change, until we stop emitting fossil fuels. And even then, it'll take a while. It's not immediate. So no, Virginia, the kids are not going to be okay. Maybe our grandkids will start to see it get better. But so let's start with what you can do at home. One person said, he said, here's climate change in 13 words. It's real, it's bad, we're doing it, but there's hope to make it less bad if we act. So in that sense, someone else said, well, first try to green your power source, make your source of energy more renewable, and then electrify everything. Electrify your whole house, all of your appliances, and your heating, and your cooling, and your yard tools. That leaf blower, make that electric, not gasoline power. So that's a tall order, and you don't have to do all that at once, but you can say, well, I'm going to waste less. I'm going to waste less food. I'm going to waste less energy. I'm going to change the damn light bulbs to LEDs. That'll save 10% of your electricity bill, right off the top. A plastic straw is not too important, but single-use plastic bags are important. And if you can find a place, your local food store or whatever, which will accept those plastic bags, or take your own bag to the grocery store and not use single-use plastic bags. There are lots of things, small things like that you can do. But the lighting and efficiency, both in your food scraps, waste less food, waste less energy, that's important. If you can, these are bigger lifts. Some people take out their front lawn and plant a vegetable garden. Or I took out my yard and I already had a vegetable garden, but I expanded my vegetable garden, so I grow more of my own food. Not all of it, but some, and everything helps. Everything helps. I was already recycling. We have a city recycling center here for South Whidbey, but there's no, unlike King County, you can't have a roadside bin where you put your yard waste and your kitchen scraps and they pick it up. They don't do that here. So I started composting my kitchen scraps on the property. Every week or 10 days, I go out and dig a trench somewhere in my yard and I bury my kitchen scraps. And this has reduced the weight of my garbage by half. Half of my garbage going out was the kitchen scraps. So that's an important thing. If you have the space to do that, composting is important. You can have a worm bin. You can buy a worm bin and do that even in your garage. It doesn't smell. So I compost that way. Compost and recycling is important. And it's not hard, it's not expensive, it's not a big lift. Moving up from that, and recycling and composting is important. We did put solar panels on our house. And we did that, we had done that in Shoreline, and moving up here, the utility is Puget Sound Energy. And for a few years, they actually would pay you for the power that you make, whether you use it or you send it back down the wire. So every year, and they probably don't do this anymore, I don't know, but for a few years, every year I get a check from Puget Sound Energy for $2,000.
Wow.
And that more than pays for electrical power that I make every year. And my panels are 10 kilowatts, and it's about 1,000 hours. So it's 10,000 kilowatt hours, and that means about 1 kilowatt hour per hour. So it's like a 1 kilowatt hour 1 kilowatt light bulb burning continuously 24/7 for the whole year. That's about what we have electric stove and electric refrigerator and electric laundry and electric dryer and a ductless heat pump, which is much better than central heating. So all those things matter. And we have one electric car, which is charged off the panels on the roof, and that uses about 1/4 of the power that we generate every year. And our second car, which is VW Jetta, is a diesel, and I want to replace that with a VW electric car. And then I might want to put a few more panels on the roof to help supply the power that second electric vehicle would take. But anyway, our house is fossil fuel free. So when the power goes out, we still are stuck. So the panels only work when the power is on. So what I would like to do, again, this is for the future, is to have some sort of backup battery in the garage that would run my house for a day or so when the power does go out. We don't have that now. Other things that I would do in the future, and these all cost money, is to improve the weatherization in my house. We have some windows that are kind of weepy. The seal is broken, and we need better insulation in the floor and the ceiling. All those things mean you use less energy. You can't do these all at once. You can't run out, and people say, I can't afford an EV. No, that's right. But sometime in the next 5 or 7 years, you'll probably buy another car, and maybe you can buy a used EV. And there'll be a big market for used EVs as well. You don't have to spend $50,000. And for certain models, the federal government gives you $7,500 credit, takes it right off the top. And if there's a state as well, waiver of the state sales tax, that matters, and maybe some state incentive as well. So I predict that within a year or so, there's going to be price parity between internal combustion vehicles and electric vehicles. And then to run them, no more spark plug change, no more oil change, no more tune-up, none of that. All goes away. The cost to run electric vehicles is very, very low. And if you make your own power, it really is very low. So it's equivalent to a gasoline car that gets 100 or 200 miles per gallon instead of the 25 or so, which is the US average. So these are some of the things that we've done in our home. And again, some are expensive, some are not. Some you can do right now. Some of them you have to plan for, and they may be a year or 2 or 5 years in the future. But what we have to go as a world, we have to have our emissions from fossil fuel peak in this decade and go down by half by 2030. That's only 8 years away. And have to go to 0 by 2050. That is, the world has to be net carbon neutral by 2050 if we have any chance of stopping the warming at 1.5. I personally, as a climate scientist, I think we're blown past that. I think we're going to hit 2 degrees of warming and maybe overshoot and have to come back down. But this is the world of our children and our grandchildren. And we have to do everything we can while we're still alive on this planet to make it less bad. It's still going to be bad. And eventually it'll get better, but not right away.
So appreciate taking the time and helping us spur a discussion. Hopefully we'll have you back for a couple of other of these short videos. So
well, thank you so much. And I would also say that you are leading as well. That Catherine Hayhoe, the climate scientist who speaks to evangelical audiences, says the most important thing we can do for climate change is talk about it. And that's what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. So thanks very much for being part of this conversation, because there's nothing like having some of the top experts chime in and help the rest of us along with this. So
thank you, Rod, for inviting me.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, so I hope you heard. I mean, first of all, a bunch more ideas, but secondly, the talking about it. I loved how when Susan opened it up, boy, you just had a bunch of great ideas and started getting them out. That's what we need to do. We need to be able to come together and share and support each other and expand that So that's wonderful to hear. Now, I want to share another slide. So one of the big things we talk about in terms of systemic issues is methane. It's just an amazing the difference it can do, but we've got to get organized politically. On the individual level, this is something you can do. EVs, as indicated, if you, again, small things add up. So absolutely keep them. If you can do the big things, that's going to make a bigger difference fast. And so I wanted to just show you, I just put in a heat pump. Now, let's see, supposedly you're going to be able to see my cursor. There's the outside unit here. Here is the inside unit. Basically, this is exactly where our gas furnace used to be. They took it out, put in the heat pump internal inside part, and there's the duct work. You could use the same, generally, you can use the same ducts. Not always. You've got to, like everything, you've got to check with your local people, see what is actually going to be feasible for you. But for us, they could just use the ducts that we've got. And here is what I really want to show you. This is the gas valve. When it's in the horizontal position, that's when we had our gas furnace, and the gas, we had this use the gas for our gas furnace. Look at it now. When they turned that down, in other words, shut that gas off, that was one of the most wonderful feelings I have had. Suddenly, and I added this up, I took a look at my bills. I am now no longer emitting about 3.5 tons of carbon every year, simply because that valve was turned off. So that's the power of something like a heat pump. So for those of you with gas furnaces, if you have, they do cost a little more, and they can cost a lot more up front, and then you get rebates back. And in the long term, they save money. They will be cheaper than a natural gas furnace. And it's not going to take long, I think probably 3-4 years. But I wanted to show you that. I mean, it was just that wonderful feeling. That got me halfway to my 2030 target. Now I have an EV that got me the other half of the way. I am now, and I'm not trying to put myself up as anything great. I'm not rich. I had to save up. I had to, juggle things. But the point is simply, big things are doable. These things are available now. Not everyone's going to be able to afford it, but if you can, start thinking, can I do this? How would I? Check it out, see what you think. Some great options out there to get us down to those numbers that are possible. And that's what this whole session is about. Let's keep doing the small things, they're critical, but let's also think big, see how big we can go, support each other in that, and we'll all do our own thing, different things. Brad, we've got a couple of minutes if you want to see if there's any questions, and if you want to give your little example.
So, first of all, I want to thank everybody who responded in the chat to Susan's question. There was a lot of wonderful ideas, a lot of very simple changes, but it shows where you're making responsible choices. And the same thing with your priorities. And that's the kind of thing that Lori and I in our journey is our priorities in our life. And so, you know, we have a hybrid car. We bought it back in 2013. Our next car is going to be an EV. And so we have steps in our lives, and we're planning and making, you know, saving so that we can make the next step. And the other things in our lives, many we share with what you put on the chat. Are there one, two of you that might want to share just like one of your, say, things that you're doing on a good, say, let's say a moderate to large level? And then everybody else can just put it into the chat. So there's a couple of people that just like to share verbally, and then I invite people to also put it into the chat.
I wanted to share, I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and we have a climate committee, and I've joined that. And we wrote a little grant. It was about saving pollinators. And one of the things, and in this climate group, I mentioned this group. And one of the first things they said, I said, my church group it's out on the West Coast in Washington. So they were real impressed that Community of Christ, which they hadn't heard of, was taking this on. So that was one thing. Second thing is we wrote a small grant. We're getting money. And what we're doing is setting up a League of Women Voters, because if you know anything about them, they're kind of known for digging in deep to issues. And so we have a website, and we're going to have something, we're trying to figure out how to be as waste-free as possible, but something, I think our title is Get the Buzz or something. It'll have little bees, but then there'll be the LWV Go Here website, ways you can help now, something like that. And either go door to door. We're trying to think paper, or should we do posters or whatever. But I'm really heartened to see that people do want to talk about it. It was, we polled the whole League of Women Voters. This was the second issue, climate change, right, with voting rights, those two things. Nice. So maybe we can have an impact there. And I just wanted to share with you that I mentioned you, and I haven't been able to be here for a couple of months, but they were really impressed to hear that there was a denomination that was making that a focus and was gathering people around the country and even some out of country. And so just wanted to share, you've had a big impact that you probably weren't aware of. And I haven't been here for the last couple of months because I've been working on some of these other things, but I appreciate the websites too that we can check. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would just quick story, then please keep adding to the chat. So Thursday, my wife and I, Lori, actually were part of a protest outside of City Hall, where we live in Lacey, Washington, against a proposed gas station that's going to be put right next to a city park, and only blocks from a middle school and a block or so from a future elementary school. And it's going to cause all kinds of safety issues, environmental issues. And so we protested on Thursday outside of City Hall before the city council members voted. Unfortunately, they did not listen to what the community wanted, what the community needed. So it was a great disappointment, but we can't stop getting engaged with our political and elected leaders. We have to keep raising our voices. We have to keep voting for people. And I'm sure a lot of you have done that. And I just want to thank you all for your actions. And because also responsible choices is about who we vote into city council, government, state level, federal, etc. All right, so let's transition to the next.
Michael Clark.
Oh, Michael Clark had something?
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see him.
And Michael, when you're done, then we'll transition right on into our political activist, Randy Litzenberger. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's one of my things is protesting. And the last time me and Andrew were in London, I've decided to go as the peaceful protester now. And I think it's important to speak up for what we believe in, you know, in climate change and that. And but I really enjoy protesting, and but I don't like to get arrested and stuff. But it's good to speak up, and like we can do little things in protest, or we can do big things, and they all come together to bring forward the knowledge that our planet's in trouble and we need help. So.
Thank you, Michael. And I would say, Andrew, you may want to find better friends to hang out with. No, just kidding.
Yeah, and we go about in these electric cars, so it's really handy.
So if you're interested in more about Michael and Andrew's protests, peaceful protests there in England, the archive of their videos about that are on our website, and you can find some information under the prayer vigil section. Okay, I know there's probably other people. Let's move on, and we'll have another opportunity. Feel free to add to the conversation during the next discussion time. Randy Litzenberger is the co-chair of the 34th District Democratic Environment, Energy, and Land Use Caucus, and he convinced me to join. So I now am a political activist with that EELU. Let's hear from Randy. Are you ready with that video, Rod?
I'm going to take the perspective of
I noticed Mary.
our home, our family here, just my wife and I. We live near Langley, Washington, on Whidbey Island.
It's great to be back here and to talk with members.
I want to say that
folks are asking the critical question about how do you make an
whatever we
impact?
do as
Now, certainly
individuals,
there's a variety of different
we won't
ideas
solve the
that are
problem,
out there,
but
and people tend to
it's
think of the
part of the
traditional pieces
solution,
like
and
recycling
every
or maybe
contribution
something broader in terms of getting
and
that
the
electric
things we can
car.
do as
Those are certainly
individuals, as a
laudable
family,
ambitions. But there's a
things we
lot
can
that
do
you
in
can
our
do.
community, our
That
city.
basically,
Rod, we've got
doesn't-
2 videos going at the same
Stop it,
time.
Rod.
Yeah, no, I was trying to see what in the world is going on there. I am not entirely sure. I'll try it again.
Well, thank you for all your efforts, but
Let's give it another shot.
doesn't require any money.
And we can
just
advocate
with the established
for
home.
policy.
No, we're getting both of them. I got a different way of getting there. Hang on.
Okay.
It will just take a moment. I do have a backup plan.
It's great to be back here and to talk.
We've got a
members.
request by
I
Mary
understand that
Williams
folks
to
are asking the critical question about how do you make an
report
impact?
websites in the
Now, certainly
chat.
there's a variety of different ideas that are out there, and people tend to think of the traditional pieces like recycling or maybe something broader in terms of getting that electric car, and those are certainly laudable ambitions.
Yes.
But there's a lot that you can do that basically doesn't require any money, just with the established home that you have and the like. And I want to start with those here. At my high school, I take time teaching my students how to make an impact. And one of the organizations that we are partnered with is called Sustainability Ambassadors. You can see that on screen now. And it includes at this page, and Susan will share that link with you later on, the opportunity to look at micro impact projects. You can click on any of these here to talk about hidden toilet leaks, money down the drain, the importance of loading your dishwasher fully and the like, to be able to save water, to be more efficient with it. And the impact on these is real. If you think about for hidden toilet leaks, it estimates in this impact project by a student, that in a year, with a leaky toilet, just one leaky toilet can waste over 100,000 gallons of fresh water. So this has more import than you may realize. These are small things that are entirely within the locus of your control. They give you the opportunity to do that work yourself just in your own home, or maybe even in a friend's home and the like. Recommending these can be a contagious way to get going, and definitely a great idea to get started. Lots of ideas here as you can scroll through, even things like neighborhood doggy bag stations, disconnecting your downspout, letting people know how much you love storm drains. There's great ideas here to think about as far as the work. The macro impact projects are important too, and they allow you to expand your scope beyond just your home or your residence, and a chance to think about interacting with institutions,
Lost the
or neighbors,
video.
neighborhoods. One thing to think about here definitely is the fact that for me, I work in a comprehensive high school. So I have 1,600 students at my building, 160 of which I teach every day. I have
Rod,
100
we've lost
plus
the
staff
video.
members that are there, and
There
collectively
we go.
we all
Thank
have
you.
a big footprint. And when you think about those institutions, whether it's a school that you work at or a business and the like with dozens or even hundreds of people, collectively the footprint of that institution is a big part of our day and a big part of our lives. One thing you can consider here, and it's in the sustainability ambassadors as well, is this reality that the waste stream that we have just from our place of work is something that isn't nearly as well managed as your home or residence is. For those of us that recycle or compost, we know we can really reduce the amount that's going to landfills pretty dramatically. But in institutions, that tends to be an afterthought. And, you know, one of the most effective things you can probably do is just forming a little team of folks that are willing to spend some time helping police the recycling bin, making sure that there's no pollution in it, that it isn't ruined. If you realize that one single thing going into a recycling bin, even if 99% of the material that is in there is perfectly ready to recycle, one piece of garbage can destroy the whole lot, and they'll have to throw that all into the garbage bin. We know that's a challenge at our school, one we're trying to address. It certainly is a challenge at other institutions too. So that comes down to simply setting aside time by willing volunteers, or maybe even encouraging your employer to be willing to say, look, we're going to make this a team effort. This is going to be a focus for us to be able to do this on a regular basis. And so that's something to think about. Literally policing the recycling bin is one that can make a huge, huge, huge difference. Absolutely. Now, when we think about individuals and their impact beyond that, we'll jump away from sustainability ambassadors here. We have to consider too the challenge of what we all count on in our homes. Certainly, it's a great aspiration to be able to move from that natural gas appliance that you have. The more we learn about natural gas in terms of combustion inside the household, now we know far more now about the impact on health, asthma rates and the like from combusting all the chemicals that come along with that. So moving yourself to an electric heat pump is a great idea. I know some people are able to do that fairly quickly. Others, that might be a process that you wait until the lifetime of that natural gas appliance has been reached, and then you work towards replacing it. Another thing to consider too, to plan ahead, is the fact that the panel that you have in your home represents one of the biggest bottlenecks that we have and one of the most important pieces of the energy transition, which is the electrification of our homes, as well as businesses, cars, transportation, and the like. That panel at your home represents the limiter about how much power you can bring through in terms of electricity. So even if you just have a few electric appliances, but are thinking about that electric car or that electric heat pump, plan ahead. Get the work done as soon as you can in terms of getting that bigger panel to increase the electric service that you have. It's estimated that we're going to have to increase by 50 to 100% the amount of electricity that our homes can handle to be able to handle an electric car and all those things. In my home, we have 200-watt service, or 200-amp service rather, and ultimately with 2 electric cars and then an electric heat pump and an electric stovetop, that's taking up pretty much all that panel to be able to do so. And that's something to consider in terms of what you need to plan ahead for. If we were able to get those panels up in every home in America, we'd be more than ready to grease the skids towards electrification. So there are a few ideas for it. And one more thing to share with our limited time. I do think that your utility might be the most prime opportunity that you haven't thought of yet. A lot of utilities offer, in the Seattle area and elsewhere, the chance to choose green energy, which is not meaning that you have to put solar panels on your home or wait for them to necessarily do that with their business model. But oftentimes they offer a green electricity option that costs maybe a couple more dollars a month, but then you're putting your dollars towards wind, solar, other renewables that will start pushing the needle for them. As more and more customer demand comes along to get renewable energy, which was very much happening right now, that's going to push utilities to green the grid. We need to, as climate journalist David Roberts says, we need to electrify everything and we need to green the grid. And so customer demand with our local utility can be a big piece of the puzzle for that, especially if you're willing to coordinate with friends and neighbors and push the envelope for that. So there's a few ideas that I hope can be helpful, whether it's sustainability ambassadors and very much in your own locus control, in your own home and the like, making strategic decisions about planning out for the transition for your home, possibly your business in terms of electrifying it, or even pushing your local utility. These are big impact ideas that can do a lot more than you think.
Okay, that's great. Paul, you're up. Paul's going to share with us a couple of ideas about divesting ourselves of fossil fuel investments.
Okay, is everybody seeing a screen of the IPCC
Yes.
cover? Okay. So as Rod mentioned, the recent IPCC report points out that we are at a moment in time where we must take action in order to mitigate, not avoid, but mitigate the most deadly effects of climate change. One of our most immediate concerns is our crippling dependence on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels spew carbon into our atmosphere and is a primary driver of global temperature rise. I think most of us on this call, we already share in the knowledge that the rising global temperature is a bad thing. A movement gaining momentum is the Defund Fossil Fuel Initiative. And proponents of this policy push to get anyone who's investing money to not invest in fossil fuels. They also push to get those currently invested in fossil fuels to change course and divest their fossil fuel funding. So along with funding, activists also push insurance companies to refuse to underwrite fossil fuel projects. Insurance companies are actually double dating with fossil fuels. First, they underwrite the fossil fuel operations and projects. Then they also invest in those same fossil fuel projects. So that means that my car insurance premiums, my home insurance premiums get invested in fossil fuel companies. Now, to complete the hat trick, the insurers then try to revoke the policies in areas that are threatened by climate change disasters. Oh, no more policy for you, you're in a high fire zone or you're in a flood zone. But there have been successes. The Ford Foundation, which to me seems like an entirely founded on fossil fuel company, they announced last year that they plan to divest all their fossil fuel investments. They also said they would invest those monies in alternative and renewable energy. About the same time last year, Harvard University, and they have a huge endowment fund, also announced that they would no longer invest their endowments in fossil fuels and would not renew any of their legacy investments as they expire. So who's doing this? So you just kind of look around you. Divestment activists are encouraging not only the corporations, but also faith organizations, universities. They're encouraging cities to join in. New York pledged its fairly sizable retirement investment fund would be net zero by 2040. And of course, they're pushing them to get that to 2030. Education has joined in, following Harvard's example, the University of Illinois, Dartmouth College, Loyola University, University of Toronto, among others, have announced plans to divest after years of student and alumni pressure. Obviously, the University of Dundee in Scotland has agreed to divest from all fossil fuels. So similar student movements have recently started at Cal Poly, University of Virginia, and as we can see, McGill University in Montreal is starting a movement to get their school to divest. Today, there is a massive project to build the biggest heated oil pipeline in the world, and it's currently in the planning stage. It's the East Africa Crude Oil Pipeline, EACOP, and it has activists all fired up. Pipeline in Uganda and Tanzania can be very hazardous to your health. So luckily, climate activists have banded together and help is coming from kindred spirits across the globe. So you can research the damage this pipeline will cause at Stop EACOP. They have a website and they go into all the different negative aspects of this monster pipeline. So far, thanks to the pressure people are doing, 20 major banks and 8 large insurance companies have either said no or have backed out of supporting this pipeline due to pressure from environmental groups. In the US, our Congress, there's even a bill called the Fossil Free Finance Act that's going through Congress, and that orders the Fed to steer banks away from financing oil, gas, and coal companies by unraveling the banks that refuse to comply. So fossil fuel companies are some of the wealthiest and most powerful companies on the planet, and they're using their money to block every serious attempt to stop climate change. They're putting short-term profits ahead of our shared futures. But you can add your voice to the call to stop investing in fossil fuels. Contact your faith organization. Inquire how they invest their endowments. Contact your alma mater, your university. Find out how they invest their endowments. Contact your bank. Ask if they invest in fossil fuels. You can see several names listed. They invest in fossil fuels. Maybe you shift your bank account and your credit cards. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America are ranked as the 4 worst banks for the climate due to their financing of fossil fuels. Check the funds from your 401k, your retirement plan, or your personal portfolio. See if any of them are investing in fossil fuels. If you're a little bit timid about changing financial advisors, check and see if your investment company offers a sustainable investing option. Several of the major investment houses now offer sustainable investment funds. Now, keep in mind that does not make these sustainable companies. These fund options may very well be the ultimate in greenwashing, but they are at least giving you the option for your investments to do less harm. So, yeah, discerning the greenwashing from the legitimate is a topic that we hope to cover perhaps in a future session. Insurance. Check and ask if your insurance company invests or underwrites fossil fuel operations or projects. If they do, write a letter to the CEO. Ask them to stop helping create climate disasters. So speaking of insurers, the latest insurer looking at that EACOP pipeline is Marsh McLennan. And there's a campaign to gather names to ask them to drop the EACOP project. So if you're interested in adding your name, if you send us an email, we'll send you the link where you can get involved in that. We'll put some sample letters on our website that you can kind of modify and tweak to your own circumstance, and then either mail them or email them to your banker, the president of your alma mater, your insurance company, Let them know that one more of their customers is asking for them to care about our planet. So if you have any account, that makes you an investor. And you do have ways for you to put your money where your heart is. Our enduring principles include the sacredness of creation as well as making responsible choices. So working to defund fossil fuels is one way to honor both of those enduring principles. We have a few minutes, or if you have any questions or comments, we could take those now. Sue Ann says, another thing we've done is move our 401k and IRA and all financial accounts to a company that manages funds entirely in sustainable investments. Bravo.
Mary Williams.
Mary, there you are.
Hi.
Hey, Mary.
A couple things. I wanted to ask, and I might have missed because I came on late, and I have to jump off and go to a 4 o'clock meeting for Democrats for Diversity. We're doing our endorsement meeting. So, to encourage folks, again, to contact their electeds. I'm a 37th district PCO. There's a wonderful app called 5 Calls. And I have it on my phone. And when issues come up about climate or that, you just go on that app and it'll tell you exactly how to contact your elected. And it even pulls up the number. You can just press it and call them and leave a message. It's wonderful for issues just like this. And then the second thing I was going to say, of course, is it's Pride Week. So I have my Pride flag. And then Juneteenth is coming very soon. So I'm hoping you all invest in human capital and find out about Juneteenth. But I'm curious about, I keep getting these calls about at the end of 2022 is going to be the last chance for you to get solar panels. And it's all these companies that seem like they're fly by night. Does anyone have a reputable information on how to get linked up with solar panels? And is that true that this is going to end at the end of 2022 for our state? Or is that just a ploy?
That I don't know. That's probably, Rod, a topic for future discussion. The issue is that it depends on the state. So you'd have to kind of do a broad.
Yeah, and I am in Washington, so I don't know. It keeps coming across my, one of my social media and stuff, and it always says, this is your last chance to get solar panel. And I'm going, actually, I know some members of the church that have them, and I do support that idea, and I feel like it would be a good investment, but I don't want to just go with some, fly-by-night company.
Yeah, I would suggest talking to the people at the church that,
I see Sue Ann. Sue Ann has put something in the chat, so I will get with her. But I know our governor is very passionate, Mr. Inslee, Governor Inslee, and so I'm very proud to stand with him at my job and remind them about recycling and all the ways we can do our little part. So thank you so much for your presentation.
I think we probably are running out of time.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. I see an old one. Yeah, I think we need to bring this to a close. I have a matrix of possibilities depending on whether you're a beginner or an advanced person, whether you want to do individual stuff or systemic stuff. It lists a whole bunch of things and then a whole bunch of priorities that's going up on the web. We won't talk about it now, but yeah, you can be on the lookout for that in an email may spur even some more ideas. And that's been the whole purpose of this session, because this is the last session before the summer. And so this will give you a chance over the summer to start pondering these things and some of the, and remember what you've heard and seen. Lots of people doing things. This is great to see. I'd love to write President Veazey and say, my gosh, this church is working. Look at the response. But there is always that next step. Okay, so let's bring this to a close. I'll bring up the PowerPoint again. So hopefully you can see today's emphasis screen. It's just a simple recap that the window of opportunity is now. Now, it's not like if we don't do it today, if tomorrow it's going to be catastrophe. No, tomorrow it's just going to be one day worse. We either dig a hole a little deeper each day, or we turn around and start climbing out each day a little more. And that's the whole point, is trying to climb out, support life in these ways, and recognize and it was wonderful to hear all your diverse reactions. And I hope you take that to heart. It is one of our enduring principles, and that is why it is one of them, because we all have distinct, different roles, common cause. And it's been wonderful to hear things. There just wasn't time to hear everything and then also discuss everything. So absolutely, whoops. As I say, there won't be a conversation this June, but come September, we'll be picking up on a lot of these things. We'll be taking a look at what some of your critical concerns were and issues, some of the things you want to hear more about. And please feel free to either email any of us or contact us via the web. There is that contact us form, and say, I'd like to know more about, you talked about this divesting thing. Well, I don't know that much. Can you, we'll bring in an expert. Or the EVs. Well, what's what type of EV, or various things. So please continue that spiritual journey, that giving it the thought and the heart that recognizes the pain around this world already, and the vision, that wonderful vision that God has always wanted for us, and that we can move towards, and in ways that hopefully some of this has been an inspiration, such as the methane, that you thought, oh, well, how much can a few leaks do? Well, it's an incredible amount. And there's other areas that we didn't get into. So I very much appreciate you being part of this. As Richard Gammon stated, it is these sessions that are critical, our ability to start talking about it, and then our ability to start sharing with it. It's a critical part of this whole thing. So in that sense in which we started, I'll end by, in fact, commissioning every one of you to become the superheroes to address climate change. You may not have magical powers, but we sure do have the ability to bring about change if we come together. So consider it over the summer. Get into those discernment modes, however it works for you, and we'll come back next fall and continue to seek that good spirit in as we try to align with it and develop that flourishing of life for all. So be on the lookout for an email that I will send out saying the video and the templates are up there. I don't normally do that, but I will do it this time simply because of a couple of the things we didn't get around to. So superheroes of the world, thanks for coming. Thanks for being part of this, and go forth seriously under that wonderful inspiration, love, concern of God, and go in peace. So you can unmute now and say your goodbyes.
Rod, there were so many good suggestions in the chat box. Will you also save the chat box and post
Yep.
it as well? Because there were just a lot of comments in the chat box. I think we should post it on our website.
Yeah, the chat's always saved, but that's a great idea. Post some of this stuff. Let's keep it going. Let's build on it. Yes. Okay.